Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis Investing News from December 27th to January 2nd. Firstly, just want to wish you all a very happy new year before we jump in. Here's to a better 2022. Now, before we start, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. We're going to start with this video from CNBC as they cover the potential new regulations that could reshape the U.S. cannabis market in 2022. So let's see what they've got to say.
Had a rough go of it this year, and there are still many challenges heading into the new year, despite another potential year of rises for that sector. Frank Holland joins us with the playbook for 2022.
Hey, good morning, Wolf. Well, the legal U.S. cannabis market is forecast to grow to $31 billion in 2022. Sales are expected to grow 28%. Questions about the timeline for federal legalization. Those are also growing. A reform bill passed by the House has yet to go to a vote in the Senate. Analysts say the difficulties in passing the Build Back Better bill are a headwind for cannabis. But Stifel believes the Safe Banking Act that allows banks to do business with legit cannabis companies has a good chance of passing in 2022. A major trend to watch, THC beverages, cannabis beverages. They only make up about 1% of the U.S. market, less than 2% in Canada, but they're much higher margin. It's estimated about a dime worth of cannabis goes into a cannabis beverage, but they can then retail for $3 to $5. Constellation Brands, Molson Coors, Heineken, they already have investments or partnerships with Canadian cannabis companies, something to watch on your store shelves in the future. And there are a lot of questions about how supply chain will impact cannabis. U.S. prices, they've fallen 15% year over year. Canadian prices even more, while warehousing, grow facility, and trucking rates remain at all-time highs. But the real wild card for cannabis next year is the New York City market fully opening.
Actually, it's the New Jersey market fully opening, which is scheduled to open in February of 2022. That's something that I find interesting that they just completely don't mention. But yes, New York is scheduled to go online near at the end of 2022 or beginning of 2023. And that will be another massive market on top of New Jersey, on top of Virginia, New Mexico, and Connecticut that all legalized this year.
Estimated to be over $4 billion. What cannabis companies do to compete with the illegal market that has a very developed supply chain, delivery system, and a very broad selection that will all be watched and modeled, not only around the country, but possibly around the world. Wolf and Becky, back.
And so that is CNBC's take, and ultimately the inaction from the Dems over the year of 2021 has only helped the big MSOs get stronger and has really simultaneously made it more difficult for small businesses and minority entrepreneurs to even get a chance to start or operate in this space. So ultimately, I think the real wild card is going to be Chuck Schumer going forward, because obviously he had 2021 to do something. He didn't, so he's kind of proven to us that he's no different than Mitch McConnell, holding the position of power that he does. And so he has the rest of 2022 to get something done. And we're just going to have to wait and see if he's going to take that opportunity or if he's going to prove to be like other politicians and continue kicking this can down the road. So we've got another one, this one from Ben Kovler. He was on CNBC as well with Frank to answer some questions. So just want to play a clip of this one as well, because Ben always is a great speaker and tells this American growth story very well.
Joining us now to answer some of those questions, Green Thumb Industry CEO Ben Kovler. Ben, happy holidays. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Frank. Happy holidays.
So, according to Headset, the U.S. legal cannabis industry is going to grow to $31 billion next year, 28% growth. Clearly a high-growth industry. 18 states allowing for recreational-only sales, the fastest-growing part of the U.S. cannabis market. What would federal legalization mean to your business, to overall sales, and the industry?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Federal legalization would be a major change. We don't see that coming very soon. What's actually happening on the ground, with all the stats you just said, is a major bull market. The consumer category of cannabis is $25 billion of legal sales this year. And like you said, 31-ish or something like that next year. But we see it, if you zoom out 3 to 5 years, going to 75 billion. And that's a monstrous opportunity for a company like Green Thumb and others in the U.S., regardless of the U.S. federal policy.
Yeah, let's talk about U.S. companies for a second. You guys generally called multi-state operators as opposed to Canadian companies. They're called Canadian LPs. One thing that we don't talk about enough is that your company and companies like yours, MSOs, are the only ones with the right to sell in the U.S. The Canadian LPs can only sell up north. When you generate so much more revenue than the Canadian companies and you have access to the biggest market in the world, Why do you think that, in general, investors favor those Canadian companies more, and why are they down on cannabis stocks in general? Because as we just talked about, it is a high-growth industry.
Sure. So what you said is really important. Again. The U.S. operators on the inside of a very
Canadian
large
names.
moat, because it is federally illegal in the cannabis industry. And so where the stocks go in the short term and what happens, more like a short-term voting machine, long-term weighing machine. And keep in mind, U.S. operators like Green Thumb and others are not listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's misunderstood by most investors. But the opportunity is here right now for U.S. operators, because the thesis remains the same, that this is Prohibition 2.0, and the USA is the land of the brand. And we can build a branded consumer product in cannabis right here in the U.S., because state policy, like you mentioned, is a tidal wave forward. Step back a second and look at 2021. States like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Virginia all legalized. That means the governor signed the bill. The market has not turned on. That's approximately 40 million Americans. We see this $5 to $10 billion market coming soon to the U.S.
And imagine that. The entire time that he's on there, they do not show a single U.S. multi-state operator ticker. They only show Canadian LPs. So thank you, Ben, for providing that education, because education is first and foremost key to getting the truth about the story out there. But so just wanted to play that clip because, again, he's very well spoken. And to touch on that, Green Thumb continues to execute as they enter Minnesota through acquisition of Leafline Industries. And so today they announced that it has closed an acquisition of Leafline Industries. As one of only 2 licensed cultivators in the Minnesota medical cannabis market, Leafline is licensed to grow, process, and dispense cannabis directly to patients. So this helps Green Thumb get into Minnesota. And just a bit of information about this market: with a population of nearly 6 million people, Minnesota began medical cannabis sales in 2015 and currently has only about 29,000 registered active patients, according to the Minnesota Department of Health. The state currently has 17 qualifying conditions, including chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, post-traumatic stress disorder, and seizures. Products available include vape, tinctures, topicals, with flower and edibles later coming in 2022, and Green Thumb's presence in Minnesota will further enhance and support the medical cannabis patient community through its high-quality branded products and experiences. And there's actually a story that I do have later that is positive for Minnesota, as they will soon allow medical flower as well, as opposed to just tinctures and medical oil. And so we'll get to that in a moment, but that's just going to help any business that is in Minnesota, which is Green Thumb, and I believe Goodness Growth as well, going to give them an edge in that state. Well, onto this one from Verano, announces closing of Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions, Inc. and Caring Nature, LLC transaction. So just wanted to relay this one, as today Verano announced, or at least on the 28th, the closing of its previously announced November 10th transaction to acquire all of the issued and outstanding equity interests of Caring Nature, LLC, and Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions, which would give them a footprint in the Connecticut market, another state that recently just legalized for adult use and will likely launch next year. Collectively, these acquisitions expand Verano's presence in the East Coast with the addition of vertically integrated operations in the attractive Connecticut market. And what this includes was the acquisition of all the equity interests of Caring Nature, LLC, including 1 active dispensary in Waterbury, Connecticut, and the acquisition of all the equity interests of Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions includes an active 216,000 square foot state-of-the-art cultivation facility, production facility in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. So that seems like a nice plus to get out of that acquisition. Well, onto this one is Air Wellness. They add their Pennsylvania footprint, opening a new dispensary in Bryn Mawr. And so they announced on the 31st the opening of Air Wellness's Bryn Mawr, the company's 8th affiliated dispensary in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So much like Green Thumb, Verano, Air Wellness continue to execute. And so just a bit of a highlight on the Pennsylvania market. Pennsylvania is a robust and growing medical market with over 680,000 patients, 140 licensed dispensaries, and 29 licensed cultivators and processors, with annual statewide medical cannabis sales are expected to surpass $1 billion in 2024, according to BDSA, while Pennsylvania is a state that we might potentially see cannabis being voted for on the ballot in the 2022 off-year elections. And so if this were to happen sooner than later and Pennsylvania would come on and launch their adult use market, we'll legalize it first and then launch that, that would be huge and drive a lot of sales into this state too, one of the larger populated states in the U.S. On to this one, we've got Yahoo Finance, and this one is an interview with Kim Rivers, CEO of Trulieve. So I just wanted to play this one for a little bit. The marijuana industry has never been despondent on federal change, which is very true, and it's good that they're getting this out there. CEO Kim Rivers says this is a fundamental state story. It has been a state story for some time, and U.S. cannabis is here to stay. So here to stay. So let's tune in.
Unfortunately, Congress has not issued my crystal ball yet. I'm waiting for that, hopefully in the new year, but I've heard there's supply chain and shipping delays. What I can say is that, this industry has never been dependent on federal change. Certainly, there was a bit of a stutter step in the market this year as a result of anticipated federal change. But really, this is a fundamental state story. It has been a state story for some time. And I would just encourage folks to zoom out. When you look at Trulieve as an example, and you look at our listing, we went public in September of 2018 at $7.50. Where we are today, we've seen an increase in just that short period of time of over 225%. So, there are, of course, some short-term bumps in the road when you have a new and exciting industry, but U.S. cannabis is here to stay. When you compare U.S. cannabis to Canadian cannabis, as an example, in 2022, the Canadian market is set to be approximately $5.5 billion compared to the U.S. market, which is estimated to be approximately $30.5 billion. And that's in our existing parameters today. So while we're certainly hopeful that the legislature and the Congress will step up and listen to the will of the American people who absolutely want to see cannabis available in a more available format in their home markets, it certainly isn't an indicator that the industry as a whole has slowed in any form or fashion.
And Kim, I do think it's important to know your company is profitable and it's one of the largest players out there in the market. In the states that you do operate, what are you seeing in terms of demand right now?
Oh, demand has never been stronger. We are seeing incredible growth. As an indicator of that growth, the first 9 months of 2021, we have seen a 79% top line growth year over year compared to 2020. And if we were to incorporate our recent acquisition, which is the largest acquisition done in U.S. cannabis, that growth rate would actually have been 259% top line. So again, customer demand is strong. Americans, I think even more so today, coming out of COVID and then of course with Omicron, want to take control of their health journey, and cannabis allows them to do that. And we're seeing again incredible demand at the stores and at the register with incredible innovation, and again additional growth ahead as more and more Americans have access to cannabis through changes at the state level.
I think the state sales data speaks for itself in that sense, is that the more states that give access to their citizens, the more sales they see, the more strength for this industry overall. But it is a state-led story, and that's what's important to remember. And so last one, just wanted to share this one from jungle.java. Nice share of the basket and cash inflows today for Advisor Shares MSOS ETF. Here are the changes made to their holdings for December 30th, 2021. So this is Thursday, December 30th, but to highlight that their position went from 59.4 million on Wednesday to 71.8 million on Thursday. And then worth adding that at the end of Friday close, the markets closed red, but MSOS managed to pull it off and close green. So based on the year that we had in 2021, obviously painful for that unnecessary price action, it was probably the best end of the week that cannabis investors could have hoped for. So just wanted to highlight that as a positive, despite the year we've just been through. So in terms of the setup heading into 2022, which looks better than ever, this is the best way I think we could have ended 2021. And so onto this one from Reason, Free Minds and Free Markets. I wanted to share this because I found this. It's very interesting. I'm going to tie it to something else that was also interesting. I just wanted to share. If Chuck Schumer supports cannabis legalization, why did he nix a bill that would have helped pot businesses use banks? And again, this is true. The simplest version of SAFE, staying in the NDAA, would have only helped small businesses and minority entrepreneurs actually get a start in this industry. Stranger still, the leading drug policy reform organization supported Schumer's obstruction. So this is what I found very interesting. So I want to relay this to you, just this one part here. Stranger still, the Drug Policy Alliance, which likewise supports cannabis legalization, joined Schumer in demanding that SAFE Banking Act be excised. We have less than 72 hours to keep the SAFE Banking Act out of this omnibus bill, and the only way to stop it is if advocates like you speak up right away. Maritza Perez, the DPA's Director of National Affairs, warned in a December 3rd urgent action alert. Don't let Congress prioritize cannabis profits over people, the header said, which is insane, because if you've been watching my channel, Despite all the talk, the simplest version of SAFE, again, it would not have helped the existing Tier 1 and Tier 2 MSOs, and it likely would not have facilitated uplisting as easily as we would have thought in the past. Now, again, I don't know, but I just wanted to say that pulling SAFE ultimately, again, helps the big guys and crushes the small guys. And while I say that, I wanted to share this with you because if we look at Drug Policy Alliance, a nonprofit organization, New York-based nonprofit organization that seeks to advance the policies that reduce the harms of both drug use and drug prohibition and to promote the sovereignty. But then if you look at the founders, big money name, George Soros here. Now, again, I do not mean to say I have any personal opinions of the organization here or the person I just named. I don't. I'm just trying to show you the sort of connections behind the scenes and how, again, big money can influence personal interest going ahead of the will of the American people. And so just to highlight, what does Drug Policy Alliance claim they do? Is the nation's leading organization working to end the war on drugs and promote new drug policies based on common sense, science, public health, and human rights. And who funds the Drug Policy Alliance? Well, this is, again, an old article from 2014, and I'm trying not to, use more energy to look in and dig down this rabbit hole just because there's too much to occupy your time with, right? But this is all just information that you can find right on Google just by typing in Drug Policy Alliance. Vachon confirmed that the foundation's giving base is primarily from Soros's personal donations to the foundation. Now, this was in 2014. It could have changed, but all I want to do is to highlight this is what they say. The Drug Policy Alliance says that they're for, common sense policy. Common sense policy would have been leaving Safe Banking Act, the simplest version, in the NDAA to get $24 billion in cash off the streets. That would have been common sense. So what they did was not common sense. Science. Well, if we were to look at the data based on the war on drugs with a scientific lens, we would say this did not work. We need to end this, so then all of the side effects will likely go away. So in terms of science, they're also not looking at it with a scientific lens either, although they claim to. Public health, again, if you would have kept the simplest version of SAFE, you would have saved lives from armed robbery, and you would have reduced organized crime. So clearly their actions are opposite of what they're saying here in promoting public health. And then lastly, human rights. While in referring to human rights, I don't think any minority entrepreneur or small business owner in the US could ask for anything more than just the right to operate their business like anyone else without threat of danger, robbery, or death. So just wanted to share that. And again, all the information's there. And I just wanted to use this to highlight what I think is the bigger problem globally right now. And it's not anything that any of us individuals have the solution to, but this is why we, the people, will need to come together and unite if we want to fight this. But that is special interest money being put before the will of the people. Whether it's in America, whether it's in Canada or any other country, I think that is the biggest problem, because ultimately what we just want to maintain is our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these sort of actions from special interest money are sadly preventing it, despite what they say and what they try to say to show otherwise. And so, rant over. On to this one from Marijuana Moment. New cannabis laws take effect across the U.S. with the new year. So just wanted to relay this, as there were some success stories in Montana. Retail cannabis sales for adults 21 and older start in Montana on January 1st, and the result of a 2020 voter-approved initiative and the work of lawmakers to finalize rules for the program. So good job, Montana. Now, Louisiana lawmakers took up numerous cannabis reform proposals during the 2021 session, including one to decriminalize cannabis that took effect in August as well. So good job, Louisiana. In California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill in September that will require hospitals to permit medical cannabis use by certain patients, and that goes into effect on Saturday. Mind you, I'm not going to read all through it, so if you want to just pause and read, you can read all the snippets. Colorado as well. As of January 1st, Colorado medical cannabis patients will be limited to purchasing up to 8 grams of concentrate per day. The previous limit was 40 grams of concentrate daily. Fair enough. In Arkansas, 2 cannabis measures will be effective in Arkansas starting on January 1. The first will allow out-of-state medical cannabis patients to access the state's program and purchase cannabis for up to 90 days. The other will make it so doctors can issue medical cannabis recommendations via telehealth services. And then lastly, in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, starting January 1, many employers in Philadelphia will no longer be able to require applicants to be drug tested for cannabis as a condition for their employment. So good job out of these states, and hopefully many more victories to come in 2022. Now we're going to move on to Colorado, as this is some good news as well. Colorado governor pardons more than 1,300 people for past cannabis convictions. This is something Biden could very well learn from this story, as Governor Jared Polis announced on Thursday that he granted 1,351 pardons for convictions of possessions of 2 ounces or less of cannabis. The move focuses on people who are eligible for relief under a new law that increased the legal cannabis possession limit for adults in the state, which Polis signed in May. At the time, he directed state law enforcement to identify people with prior convictions for amounts under the new 2-ounce limit. As adults can legally possess cannabis in Colorado, just as they can buy beer or wine, the governor said in a press release, and it's unfair that 1,351 additional Coloradoans had permanent blemishes on their record that interfered with employment, credit, and gun ownership, but today we have fixed that by pardoning their possession of small amounts of cannabis that occurred during the failed Prohibition era. Polis previewed the cannabis plan on Wednesday, saying it was in the final stages of being completed and it would be announced in the next 5 days. So good job, Governor Jared Polis out of Colorado, for righting the past wrongs and giving people their right to freedom back. Now, a few other stories. Colorado cannabis sales topped $2 billion last year, and this is referring to 2020, which is their 6th full year as a mature market. Sales continuing to grow is a very good sign. So let's learn more. As legal sales of cannabis in Colorado topped $2.1 billion in 2020, according to regulators, the highest figure recorded since sales of recreational cannabis began in the state in 2014. Colorado's Cannabis Enforcement Division, MED, released its 2020 regulated cannabis market update last week, revealing strong retail sales fueled in part by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the first to show the impacts of COVID-19 on Colorado's legal commercial cannabis industry using the state's metric data, MED Senior Director Dominique Mendiola said in a press release on December 23rd. Colorado saw the most cannabis sales ever in 2020, and it's vital to provide the public with this level of sophisticated analysis to understand the year-over-year trends in this industry. And that was the year we were hit hardest by COVID, so when we consider that the sales only increased, that's very positive in helping deem cannabis a very essential product. Combined sales of medical cannabis and adult use cannabis totaled $2.19 billion last year, an increase of 25.3% over 2019, according to the report. While recreational cannabis sales, it seems like you can grab this link here as well, so that's cool. I will actually add that into the bottom below. Recreational cannabis sales were also the highest ever, with the state's adult use cannabis retailers bringing up $1.75 billion worth of purchases in 2020, an increase of 24.1% over the previous year. While MED reported that while an increase in adult use cannabis sales had been foreseen by state regulators, an increase in medical cannabis sales was unexpected, as sales in medicinal cannabis rose 30.7% to $442.5 million in 2022, the first significant increase of medical cannabis use since 2016. So that was surprising to see as well, because most people will typically just move into the adult use market if they know what kind of cannabis they need that helps with whatever medicinal symptoms that they have. But so yeah, that's positive to highlight. So anyways, good job, Colorado. And while we're here, we're just going to jump over to these European countries that could legalize cannabis in 2022. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but just highlight the countries that can in Europe. And they put a list. Germany being the first one, Luxembourg the second, Italy number 3 on their list, Portugal number 4, and Switzerland number 5, with other European countries potentially listed as well. So you can grab these links below if you want. Now we're going to jump back to the other stories. Onto this one, as New Mexico Cannabis Division releases rules for producers and retailers, as New Mexico is set to launch their adult use market on April 1st. They are closing in on that April 1st deadline to start recreational cannabis sales, and this week the state got one step closer to a smooth and secure transition into the industry. As the Cannabis Control Division released rules for manufacturers, retailers, and couriers of the controlled substance, they outline workers and product safety and call for safe manufacturing practices. The excitement from the applicants is palpable, said Kristen Thompson, director of the Cannabis Control Division. We are really working to make sure that everyone is a success when we get to April 1st. Now, I'm not going to go through all the rules, but you can grab the link below if you want and check them out. But a lot of them do revolve just around security and safety for those operating in the space, which is worth considering. While this comes out of Minnesota Post, new rules for medical cannabis in Minnesota, this is the article I was referring to, could end up quadrupling the number of patients in the program. So this would be good news if passed, but when is that going to be passed? Wouldn't be till next year. While registered patients will soon be able to buy cannabis in plant form and smoke it, a change that could eventually result in as many as 100,000 people in the program. And so, sorry, I might be off on how soon that is, but the state office charged with regulating medical cannabis in Minnesota is in the midst of drafting rules that will finish the work of making the biggest change in the program's 7-year history, allowing patients to buy cannabis in plant form and smoke it, something that was explicitly banned by the 2014 legislation. The change, which could be finalized early next year, so although it is next year, it's early next year, which is better than late next year, was contained in the legislators' Omnibus Health and Human Services Bill approved in June, as it reverses one of the provisions that made Minnesota's original law one of the most restrictive medical cannabis programs in the U.S., adding, "We feel we've had an inclusive process and we're on track to meet the statutory requirement of March 1st or sooner," said Chris Lulks, director of the State Office of Medical Cannabis. "We feel like we will have good protections around the product for our patients. I mean, you can't go wrong with whole flower because historically it has killed no people." A lot better than what opioids can say at this point. So this is a big win for the citizens of Minnesota, who will have, again, more access to a safer, non-addictive medicine than what's currently available to them. Onto this one from Marijuana Moment, as Mississippi lawmakers position to override governor if he vetoes medical cannabis bill, GOP senator says. So we just wanted to share this to highlight democracy working in full effect in Mississippi, one of the red states where we might sort of see, powers being abused. And if the governor of Mississippi moves to veto a cannabis bill using his individual powers over his his individual concerns about the proposed purchase limits for patients, the legislature may well move to override that decision, a key state senator said on Wednesday, which I love to see democracy in action. So this is great. Apparently, Governor Tate Reeves said on Tuesday that he wants lawmakers to slash the daily purchase limit for patients in half, which is ridiculous because if you're a patient and you need 3.5 grams, then you should be able to access that. The bill that lawmakers spent the summer negotiating calls for 3.5 grams of cannabis per day, and the governor signaled he'd veto the entire reform proposal if they didn't significantly reduce the amount. How dare you try and make a decision when you don't use medical cannabis, and people that use medical cannabis might need more than 3.5 grams a day? Shame on you, Governor Tate Reeves. But Senator Bryce Wiggins, chairman of the Judiciary Committee Division A, who is also running for a seat in Congress this year, says the people of Mississippi spoke loud and clear when they voted to approve a medical cannabis legalization initiative last year, and lawmakers have a duty to deliver on the reform after the state Supreme Court invalidated it for procedural reasons. Love that. He told Y'all Politics that it wouldn't surprise me if the legislature voted to override the governor if he chooses to veto the bill that they've been working on for months, which again would just be silly of the governor and an abuse of his own power. I would hate for Governor Reeves to have any veto overridden because, like I said, I've worked with him on many different things, Wiggins said, but the reality is that Initiative 65 passed with close to 70% of the vote, and the legislature spent all summer working on this and have listened to the people. And so I love this last line. We've spent all summer working on this because it's sound policy, and we're listening to the people, the will of the people of Mississippi. So good job, especially for Senator Bryce Wiggins for making this known, and shame on you, Tate Reeves. But hopefully this will end up positive for the citizens of Mississippi and that the lawmakers will override the veto if that does so happen. And lastly, just wanted to highlight another study telling us what we already know, but more data is good. And although it's a bit old, it is still from January of 2021. It's the association between county-level cannabis dispensary counts and opioid-related mortality rates in the U.S. panel data study. What are the conclusions? Higher medical and recreational storefront dispensary counts are associated with reduced opioid-related death rates, particularly deaths associated with synthetic opioids such as fentanyl. We should do something about that, like deschedule cannabis from the Schedule 1 classification where it never belonged. While the associations documented cannot be assumed to be casual, they suggest a potential association between increased prevalence of medical and recreational cannabis dispensaries and reduced opioid-related mortality rates. The study highlights the importance of considering the complex supply side of related drug markets and how this shapes opioid use and misuse. So just wanted to relay that one. And lastly, one to show you is the MJ Stock Trader chat. And so this was just a great informative educational video that I recommend for anyone that invests in the cannabis industry and focuses potentially on fundamentals like me and who has a lack of understanding of the technical side of analysis. Chart Guy Dan is I think it's Chartman Dan. Either way, he's been a proponent of technical analysis, and I do watch his videos to try and learn from them and just get an idea of some of the underlying things. And over time, I can say that I have learned a good amount. And so he speaks with Mike, who's MJ Stock Trader on Twitter, who's another great resource for a lot of cannabis industry news and updates. And so basically, if you just wanted to get a broader understanding of technical analysis and how to potentially use it as well, this is a great video to watch, and the Chart Guys would be a great channel to follow if that's something that you want to work on and improve your understanding of. That is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Have a great weekend, everybody, and Happy New Year.